Joining me now is the former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. Speaker, always great to see you. Of course, you would expect the Democrats to use the war on Iran as a pawn for the midterm elections. What are you expecting here, Newt?
Well, I think it's very bizarre. You're in the middle of a war with a country which the U.S. State Department has defined as the leading sponsor of state terrorism since 1984. Every single year since 1984, we've said that they sponsor it. And in the middle of that, you have the Democrats refusing to fund TSA. So they're actually undermining the defense against terrorism in the middle of a war. I mean, it's one thing to say you agree or disagree with President Trump about whether or not we should have started this. But now that you're in the middle of the war, it would be nice if the Democrats decided that having America win would be a good thing. And I think we shouldn't kid ourselves. The result so far has been that the hardest line faction has taken more and more power. They have no interest in negotiating. They believe that with the help of the Democrats and others, they can simply outlast us. And this is very dangerous for the world, because in Iran, which has been trying to get nuclear weapons, trying to get ballistic missiles to reach the United States. Remember, we're not just talking about being hit by a drone or by a traditional weapon. If the Iranians had their way, they would have nuclear weapons that they would deliver on Washington or New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. And we can't imagine how horrifying that would be. So I think the president did the right thing, both when he initially took out their nuclear capabilities and now when he's gone back. And I think we just have to spend the time and the effort to defeat the regime, which I think is going to happen. I think what you're seeing in attacks on Qatar and elsewhere is an act of desperation by the Iranians trying desperately to get the war to be big enough that the world will tell Trump to stand down. I don't think it's going to work.
Well, I spoke to somebody last night about this, and he said to me, he's involved in cancer cure things, and he said, I must have spoken to 50,000 cancer patients over the last 10 years. He said, and one thing that happens with cancer patients is you don't do anything in the beginning. You're not sure what to do, and you don't do enough. And then later on, it's worse, and you have to scramble and do everything you can do to actually find a cure, get the treatment. He said, and what we've seen in this president, it was a good analogy. He said, what we've seen in this president is to get ahead to ensure that this regime never gets a nuclear weapon. 15 presidents before him knew that North Korea was working on a nuclear weapon, and they did nothing about it. And then what happened? Nuclear weaponry became a norm for North Korea. Now they have it. So, it takes courage. And so we'll see. Do you think voters will remember that going into the midterm elections, or are they going to be dominated by price of oil, affordability, inflation, and domestic issues?
Again, you and I are talking months and months before the election. My guess is that the price of oil will collapse once we solve the problem of the Straits of Hormuz.
I see.
The fact is there'll be more than enough energy, and I think by the fall, the Republicans will do very well.
Look, I got to switch gears and get your take on the SAVE Act. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says that Republicans will target Democrats in the upcoming midterms if they don't get on board with the Save America Act. The bill now being debated on the Senate floor, expected to stretch into next week, Newt. I spoke with Anna Paulina Luna about it, and she's basically putting a fire under the Senate to say, get this done, as the president is as well. Here's the Congresswoman from Florida with me this week. Watch.
There's a number of Republicans in the House that will refuse to vote on any rule that has Senate legislation, meaning no Senate legislation will pass unless the Save America Act is something that the Senate will vote on. But look, Maria, as you are seeing now, you are seeing some of the more moderate Democrats getting squishy on this issue. And what I will say is that we actually, if we stick this on FISA, let's say that everything goes to hell in a handbasket in the Senate and we can't get anything done with the standing filibuster, then we can stick it on FISA. As you know, Maria, FISA is one of these must-pass pieces of legislation that the Senate would literally walk over broken glass in order to pass. And I believe this is how we're going to actually get it done.
So, I mean, Newt, what about you know, they can't get the 60 votes. What about putting it in a reconciliation package, right? That's what John Kennedy said this week. You know, I mean,
Well, I think-
openly
I
calling
think
for
if-
Republicans to put the Save America Act through reconciliation. I mean, there's new discussion now about reconciliation, is there not?
Well, I think if they have to, that's one way to go. But I just wrote a piece for Substack pointing out 85% of the country favors having a photo ID to vote, including 65% of African Americans, 70-something% of Democrats. You have to ask yourself, why are the Democrats so desperate to stop having a requirement that we know who you are when you vote? And I said in this piece for Substack, based on my own personal experiences, it's because they want to steal elections. They want to have the ability to vote people who aren't legal, or people who are dead, or people who moved away. And it's ridiculous. So, I would challenge Schumer and others. What's your justification for turning down a bill that 85% of the American people, including over 70% of your own party, favor? Right. And I don't think they have an explanation. I think in the end, the fact is they want bad rolls that they can then vote people who are not legally here, or people who have passed away, or people who have moved away. It's crazy.
Well, by the way, you mentioned John Thune and Chuck Schumer. I mean, Chuck Schumer said this himself, right? We've got him on tape years ago saying the American people want to know that you are an American citizen before you actually vote in an election. So he said he believed it, but suddenly politics has become the dominant, dictator here. They won't open the Department of Homeland Security. Yesterday, Democrats unveiled a discharge position designed to force a vote on legislation to fund TSA, FEMA, and the Coast Guard and other sub-agencies within DHS, but not ICE or not Customs and Border Patrol, which, as we know, are funded anyway in the big, beautiful bill. The White House sent a letter to Democrats outlining changes to the Department of Homeland Security aimed at reaching a deal. It includes expanding ICE body camera use and increasing congressional oversight of DHS detention facilities. Newt, this shutdown is now stretching into day 34. We saw the hearing yesterday. I would suspect that Mark Wayne Mullen gets confirmed pretty quickly, right?
Well, I think he will get confirmed. But take the example of John Ossoff, who represents the Atlanta airport, the busiest airport in the world, and represents Delta, the most profitable airline in the world. You would think, as a home state Georgia senator, he'd be doing everything he could to get TSA paid for and to get the Atlanta airport and Delta Airlines taken care of legitimately. He's saying he's less just drunk the Kool-Aid with everybody else. They're all standing over there chanting, and they're as bad on closing TSA as they are on stopping voter ID for voting. And I think it just tells you Trump was right in the State of the Union when he turned and just said to them, you all are crazy, because these are the behaviors of people who I think are legitimately crazy.
Yeah, he sure did. I mean, Newt, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for weighing in on all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Speaker, Newt Gingrich. Stay with us. We'll be right back with The Word on Wall Street.